welcome to the Articulate Ox podcast. I'm your host, Soma79. Thank you so much for joining me today. My guests today my cat is just knocking the camera all over the place. All right, that's all good. My guests today are SETTHETONE-T and Shadow. They're a couple from San Antonio, the San Antonio area, and they are rappers, singers, and they just put out an album called Redox that I absolutely love. I've been following them for a little while on social media. They got a really great energy. They flow really well together, and I think you're going to want to check them out because they have a lot of promise, and they're going to put out a lot of very interesting music over the years. They both have a lot of great stories and opinions on music, and just we talk a lot about a lot of cool stuff here. So hope you enjoy the episode. I'm going to put a song on at the end, one of their songs, and check it out. All right, peace. Computer. All right, welcome to the newest episode of the Articulate Ox podcast. I'm your host, Soma79. Our guests here are SETTHETONE-T and Shadow from San Antonio. How are you doing today?
What's up? Doing good.
Blessed to be alive.
Yep.
Excellent. I know that feeling. So you guys have a new album out, Redox, that just came out in March, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
March 19th.
Awesome. I got a chance to listen to it today, and I really dig it. You guys got a great sound. That the whole city in general has got a really great sound. I think this album, it's just it's a combination of a lot of different things. I heard a lot of different influences there in like subtle ways, and I don't know, it really dragged me in. So definitely go check that out. So talk a little bit about, you two are a couple and you are also musical partners, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so how did you guys get started?
What?
So we've been together for, what was it? Maybe about like 3-4 months already. Before even thinking about making an album together, even doing music together. So he would kind of do his thing off on his own, and then I would do my thing, working with other artists, and really just making my own music. But it got to a point actually where I couldn't pay for studio time anymore because I had moved to a new apartment and everything. And he's like, well, I record myself. So he started offering to record me. And that's kind of where we got into each other's like music making process, where we intertwined, just him starting to record me. And then I think just naturally, I finished a project of my own, an EP, and then he had finished a few singles that he wanted to get done. And naturally, it just came about like the next step. Like, what if we did an album together?
Yeah.
And I think our like chemistry was growing even more, like working together. So
yeah, I didn't necessarily want to like jump right into it and making music. As soon as like we got together, I kind of wanted to build a foundation first between me and her, and I wanted to see like where our chemistry would go first. And as a little bit of time went on, I started to see that we could, because I had a previous project before this one called the Aquaman tape. And she got on one of my last tracks on there after it was released, and that was kind of like the introduction to what it could be if me and her worked together. And that was a whole vibe in itself. So I felt like we could take it a step further and do like a whole project together. So yeah, we were actually in the middle of working with like a bunch of other creatives when we finally decided, all right, like I think it's time for us to lock in and do this project. So, in the midst of that, like we finally like locked in together and like got that going.
Yeah, I actually skipped two singles that we did together, and you just reminded me. I forgot we had worked together, but it was just a little bit. So we did one song, like he said, he had his whole Aquaman tape, but that was already out, and he sent me a song called Not It. And I just liked it so much. I was like, well, I want to be on this song. So we did a remix, if you will. And I jumped on that song. And then we did an on-spot studio session with one of his friends, who's an engineer, producer. Yeah, shout out to Jake. Where we sat in, and I'm normally not the type of person to write on the spot, but we sat in with Jake. He made the beat on spot. And then me and him sat there and wrote together, and I felt so comfortable doing that. I think that was my first taste of like realizing we could work together when it came to music too.
Yeah, it's interesting too because there's a whole different chemistry. I was in a group, Mike Monarchy, years ago. It was me and three other guys. Two were rappers, and I was a rapper, and he's a DJ. And you realize how quickly that being in a band is like being in a relationship with multiple people, which usually doesn't go very well. And so it's there's chemistry. I mean, there's a lot. I have friends who are great artists, but we don't work well together, so we just don't work together. And regardless of whether we'd like to or not, but I mean, to have both of those is a pretty nice thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's it's had its like challenges and us
No,
like learning how to work with each other,
it brought
Yeah.
out all the monsters.
Yeah.
It definitely brought out all the monsters in
It
between.
definitely did.
It was all sweet at first, like, yeah, we're gonna get this done. And then by the end, we like hated each other. But
Yeah, it's funny. You don't realize how much you can argue over one dub that doesn't quite sound right or something like that. You're just like, wow. Because you're like, well, this is for history. This is we're not going to be able to change this later. And people start digging their heels in. I've definitely done a
exactly
little
that.
bit
And
of that.
one thing I do want to say about us working together on music, on a whole album as a couple, is I really didn't want it to sound like a couple. Well, I didn't want the whole thing to be that. So of
Mhm.
course, like let those songs come naturally. But I definitely wanted to explore like you just as a rapper and then me as a rapper, and just have some songs that weren't so lovey-dovey and
Yeah.
showed off our skills.
You
Yeah.
get that vibe because the songs definitely have different feel to them. Like from one to the next, like you explore different ways to collaborate. It feels like it's really cool sounding. I love the first one. I love the when you're repeating that phrase and that comes off really dope. And I don't know. You guys do a song called Start Up, or is it the one you
Signed,
got? What was it?
signed up.
That's what it was. Yeah. When I first heard that like a few weeks ago, I kept listening to that on repeat. I really dug that. That was really cool.
That's
It's
awesome. That's love.
it's so cool to see everybody's different favorites.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
everyone definitely has their select few that they're like more drawn towards than
Yeah.
others. So that's the first time I'm hearing that about Signed Up. So that's
Yeah.
really dope because I feel the same way about that one.
Yeah, I love it. I also when I was listening to From Here today, and maybe I'm crazy, but I felt like sort of a Nirvana influence in that to some degree. Am I just totally nuts for thinking that, or
Mine was just natural. I've never listened to Nirvana really like that.
That's
it was something I thought in a good way. It felt like, but to me, maybe it was just the way it hit my brain, but it felt like kind of like the way that he would sing a little bit sometimes, but it wasn't like, I wouldn't say, and you're like, copied it, but like it had that same evoked feeling. And I liked the way it kind of brought me to a place. I really dug that. It's the way that you sing the vocal on, and it's like, so you guys, I remember I was listening to it while I was running and stuff like that. So I was like really in the moment. Like you guys both sing and rap, or you walk the fine line, or
Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part, I think here recently in the past 2 years, I've explored singing a little more and my vocal range a little bit more. And it didn't start off like that. I started just rapping, completely just straight lyricism, and then it kind of evolved into that. And now I'm at a point where I can utilize both, and it makes for a better soundscape for me. So
you can
Yeah.
definitely tell on the album because there's that flow where it's like there's, like I said before, the songs all kind of sound differently, and you don't really know what's going to happen next because it sounds like you both are so multi-talented that you're just like, oh, this is going to keep taking. It all kind of sounds like kind of in the same lane, but there feels like twists in it. Right? It was an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, one thing I was gonna say is like I feel like we've both kind of explored that more together too. Because one thing we started doing, just even as friends, is we started making it a daily task for us to sing in the car. Or not even sing in the car. We would just check in with each other and be like, did you sing a song today?
yeah,
And it's because we
Yeah.
want to tap into that more.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think this album was our platform to really like exercise that and use it. What we've been
I'm working on this sort of promo video for like this project I'm working on, and part of it I was in over the weekend, and part of it involves me having to it's like a fake ad for an album that doesn't exist, but I have to write like 5 seconds of a bunch of these songs so I can sort of play them and pretend it's whatever. But like, so I've having to write all these short songs that I've never really sang before, and I'm trying to do it so it sounds kind of funny and bad, but a few of them are like, I think I can actually turn these into real songs, and like I've never really felt like I could sing before. But for some reason, like this weekend, that combination of just like doing it almost like with no pressure and then maybe getting a little better with twisting some knobs, I'm like, all right, well, we might be onto something here. It's a nice feeling.
That's definitely how I like stumbled into it. I started playing with things a lot more. I started playing with just melodics and cadences, and I really feel like I bumped into something. I feel like I bumped into like a sound that I can nurture.
Yeah.
You know.
Part of it too is I thinking about being, if you're not really like a natural singer, is being realistic about your range and then just really owning that range, I think. Because it's like, I mean, if I tried to sing like Whitney or something, like, I would be kicked off the internet. But like there's some people that might be able to fake it a little bit,
Right.
No, that's true. I was actually working with another artist friend, doing vocal lessons. In a way, they weren't, real structured, but we would get together, and he knows more about singing and singing from your diaphragm, more of the technical side. So we'd just get together and sing, really honestly, and he would just give me tips while I sung. But I did notice that certain artists, it was easier for me to sing their songs, and then other artists was just impossible.
And yeah, and that's something I've noticed myself too. I've learned that that's what it's about, owning your range. Because yeah, same thing. Like I just finished talking to her about certain artists like that are popular, like Drake and who else?
Adele. You know who he could sing really well? Adele.
Yeah. I could hit some Adele.
Really?
I noticed about them that they don't try to overdo it. Some artists really try to stick in a range that I feel like it's more suitable for the general consensus to sing along. It's almost easier for them to. And I feel like if they're aware of that and you're conscious of that, you might have like a standing chance. You might have a little bit more staying power because you're almost crafting like notes that almost everybody can sing along with, opposed to singing like Adele.
Right.
You and far between can hit those notes.
Right.
So
And like we're not all Mariah. So it's like we
exactly.
all, exactly that.
Yeah.
It's funny. The reason I became a rapper, I forgot about this story, but so like when I was like 21 or 22, I tried to take singing lessons because I wanted to try to be like a singer-songwriter. And this was like early 2000s. And my singing teacher was like in her early 30s, and she was just like Phoebe from Friends. Like she was like that. She looked like her, she acted like her, and it was just, and I kept going back and I felt like I was getting worse and worse. And she kept encouraging me and telling me I was doing well. And then on my last lesson, which was her last day at the studio, she like threw herself at me, and I didn't really realize it until I got home. Like she like kind of really hit on me, but I was so clueless to like, I was just like, oh, like just in my own head and whatever. And I was like, oh, she was lying to me the entire time because she thought I was cute. And then at the end, I fumbled it because I didn't realize she, like at all. And then she like moved to California the next day. I never talked to her again.
That's funny.
And I just became a rapper because I was like, well, I can't sing. I was like, so now I'm gonna rap.
It didn't work out. She didn't even take her teaching seriously.
I know. It's I should look her up and see what she's been doing.
So you say you started rapping at 22?
Well, sort of. So I went to film school because I thought I wanted to be Quentin Tarantino and like Kevin Smith, but apparently a lot of other people also that idea, and I came out and we started doing. I did like some like little music projects. We back in the day I had a little film production company in New York, and just by coincidence, right next door was the Source magazine. Like they were located like just right next door where my friend lived. So we got into some little stuff with them, and we did some work back in the day with some of their art. I think we did something with Mace's brother Blinky Blink back in the day. It's been forever. So then from there I was like, all right, well, I can't sing. I'm gonna start rapping. And I spent most of my 20s working on rap and just trying to make stuff. And then pretty much once CDs died, it became like I just got discouraged and just went into physical art. I was just like, this isn't the scene. It was like this whole scene here was made up of rappers trying to sell other rappers their CDs, and it was just like it was all pay to play shows. There was no real community. There was the enjoyment had been sucked out of it. But then when the quarantine came, I was like, I'm gonna finish off my old album, and I dusted it off and finished it, and I got a bunch of my favorite rappers on it, and now that's coming out next year. So I got Concept on it. He's on it.
Shout out Concept.
Oh,
yeah,
we're gonna have to check that out.
Concept.
Yeah, it's called Drinking Songs for Children. It'll be out next year.
Oh,
Drinking songs for children.
super dope.
That's
No.
funny.
I'm excited. I got Elza on it. He's one of my favorite rappers of all time.
I was like, yeah, I know who that is. It's from Slum Village.
Yep, that dude. Yep. So let's talk a little bit about, you guys put me onto this book. I'm glad you guys did. I'd heard of Russ. I knew his music a little bit. I didn't realize this book existed. But I typed in a few minutes ago, like self-help books, and this was one of the first things that came up. So apparently it's getting some press, but it's all in your head. Get out of your way. How do you guys discover this book, and how did it help you guys?
Well, I mean, for me, the first self-help book that I discovered prior to that one, I was actually in Barnes and Noble looking for something else. It was called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And then I bumped into that. I mean, I had already heard that Russ had a book out. I heard, whispers of it or something like that. And I saw that one right next to it, and I didn't get to check it out right away. But I always told myself I wanted to come back, circle back, and like check it out, because I pay attention to Russ's career, not avidly, but I pay attention to it, and everything he talks about in that book, it's manifested itself in his career. So I always wanted to do my due diligence and get back to that book and read it. And one day I was at work and I was looking for something to listen to while I was, working all day. So I pulled the audio book up actually, and I don't know if I've ever seen or heard of an audiobook narrated by the actual author, and he narrates that whole audiobook in his voice.
He narrated it.
Yeah. Cool. So one day, I was at work and I listened to the whole thing, and I was just left inspired and reassured, because most of the things in the book is already things I'm thinking about and living by. So yeah, I've just, I think reading that book was mostly that reassurance for me, for sure.
For me, I discovered it, I think, okay, so I work in a warehouse. I work for FedEx, but I work in a warehouse, and I'm like a higher up, so I'm in charge of the speaker. It's a big old tailgater speaker. And I would play Russ a lot because I was a fan of him already, and I had a coworker who loved him too, so we would always like connect on that. Like, oh, did you hear his new song that came out? And so yeah, one day like we were talking about it, and he's like, have you read his book? And this guy too, the coworker, he was very much like entrepreneur type, trying to get something started for himself, very motivational. So yeah, he put me onto it, just off of both of our love of Russ. He put me onto it. I went ahead and bought it. And I remember I used to lay outside. This was even, I think this might have been before even starting like to rap. I think it was before I was just doing poetry at this time. But yeah, I used to lay outside and just read it. And maybe it was right when I was starting, because I think it honestly did add some inspiration to just really going for it too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
The message of being delusional, that's sort of, he breaks the book into 3 steps, like delusion, persistence, and gratitude. And it's a great combination. You do need a lot of delusion. It is interesting advice, because this is kind of bad advice to give to somebody who has no talent, but it's great advice to give to people who do have talent. So if you're pretty self-aware, this is a really, really great book. But have you ever had to look through delusion and be like, okay, well, I just got to jump and assume something will arrive there?
I feel like I currently still do that. Still, fight through it, navigate through it, analyze it, reflect on it. I feel like it's always like a tug and pull kind of thing with that delusion, because there's times where, the way it sounds, it actually does come off as a negative connotation. Other times it is used in a positive light.
Right.
And that's what he's talking about in the book, So I feel like I try to veer in that how can I say it, that lane, that path more, the positive one. But I think pursuing this comes with a lot of challenges, mishaps, hindrances that get in the way of that. So, I mean, it's always going to be like a tug and pull, but I definitely still find myself fighting through the delusion, because you have to understand it first. You have to understand like what that delusion looks like for you. You have to understand like, you know, not everybody's going to understand, you know, and when it's like that, you got to push through it. And that's kind of where I'm at right now, you know, because there's times where I feel like everything's going smooth, everything is clicking. And then there's times where just things are like one after the next just popping up, making you feel like, okay, I actually feel delusional. This might not be for me. This might, you know, go left. This might not be what I thought it was.
Right.
And then you're right back to it, you know? So it's almost like you got to have a healthy balance of it. Honestly,
Yeah.
that's how I feel about it.
I would say I could be more delusional.
You
Like,
could be, or
That's what I strive to be. No, but honestly, as an artist, like even how you said you were coming up with, fake songs for this album for like a skit or whatnot. Hearing those and just doing it so like carelessly, sometimes those are the songs that end up being the best songs.
right.
And I think too, like the best moves too, like you said, it's the worst advice to give to somebody who is not talented. But at the end of the day too, like I think there's a part of like being delusional where you really believe in yourself that much that like you can get this accomplished, like despite what everybody thinks, of the music career, of being a rapper and whatnot. It's really like going against what everybody already counts out. So you kind of have to be already a little delusional. And then I think, like I said, in the creative process, I could be even more delusional. And that's actually what I strive to be. I want to do crazy things. Like the first person I think of is like Kanye.
yeah.
He had no fear. I mean, obviously, sometimes he should have a little more fear, but he's never had any fear, creativity. Yeah. He's just, and it's years ahead. I mean, that Yeezus album, people crapped on that when it came out. It's amazing.
Yeah,
exactly.
I definitely think of somebody like him first. And that's what I aspire to do, because I started out with a background in poetry. So it's more structured. And that's what I loved tapping into rap, was that it was less structured. But now I want to go even further and just make it so true to myself that it's like, I don't care how people receive this. This is what I'm going to do.
Right. I think too, that's sort of the positive side of the delusional part, because it's like, I think the message he's trying to give is that if you're delusional enough, you end up getting to a point where you're really just expressing yourself. Like if you believe in yourself that much, you're sort of pushing everybody's influence out of the way, and you're getting to your purest self as an artist and as a creative. And whether that's successful or not, as from a monetary perspective, you've succeeded just by getting there.
Right.
And that's a huge step that you have to sort of get through that door before. And that's probably why it's step one, because that's a huge step where we can get to the rest of it.
Exactly.
100%. Because I feel like the whole time you're doing, you're pursuing whatever you feel like you're great in, the whole time you have people telling you why or why it may not work, and you got to fight through that. And you got to understand, like, you got to build like a certain amount of confidence to a point where none of that can affect you anymore, because you already know you are so stuck in what you want to do and what you see that nobody can get in the way. And I've heard this analogy about like Steph Curry, how like he's so great at his craft, he could be at the 3-point line with a hand right in his face, but he knows exactly where the bucket's at, whether he can see it or not. He's gonna hit that shot. And I equate that to that right there, because that's exactly what that should be,
Yeah.
On the flip side on it, that that like where you're going, regardless of who's getting in the way or what's being said. So
on the flip side, yesterday I had this other moment, and I hope you guys can relate to this to some degree. So I remember I happened to be like going to the bathroom, like heading into my bathroom here, and I had this thought in my head. I'm like, I'm so excited about how everything's going in this project. It's really just going well, and I'm excited about where I'm at. Literally, by the time I walked out of the bathroom a minute and a half later, I was like, oh man, I should not even do this anymore. And I'm just like, I don't know, like, how did I get in the, and it's just, I go through that so much. I think on the episode that aired last week on my podcast, I said I was abandoning it completely. And by the next day, or even later that day, I was back to work on it. And you're just like, I just don't want to give up. And a book like this is very encouraging, because you're just like, on this podcast, we talk a lot about just being one of the survivors and being one of the people that doesn't give up, because the longer you go, the more other people just decide it's not for them anymore, and you're competing with less people at your skill level. So it's like you're like, in a month today, you can achieve what had taken you years ago. And so that always encourages me to go on.
I really feel that when it comes to performing, like I realized that this was for me off of performing, because obviously my first ones weren't where I wanted to be, but I never felt like, oh man, I got in front of all these people and I'm embarrassed and I'm not going to do it again. Right. It was like I would get on stage and feel like, my performance wasn't where I wanted it to be, but I had this hunger after, like, to get back on and do it again, to practice, get back on and do it again, do another show. And so, yeah, definitely. So like the drive to keep doing it is really what makes it or breaks it as an artist.
Would you watch a lot of your performance footage and be just critical of it, or is it, how was that experience like to try to improve on where you were?
That definitely watching videos back. A big thing for me is breath control. So when I run out of breath, you see it on my face. Like I get nervous. I'm like, but a big thing for me is just working out. So I'll start working out, rapping my lyrics like while I'm running. Just getting that breath control together, getting my breath control together, and then also to I think I've started doing like key movements in my performances. So that way, if I am nervous on stage, it doesn't look so much so, because I'm still hitting these marks in between. Right. So I still, it comes off looking natural, even in the more like performances that I'm more nervous.
That's a good idea, the rapping while like working out, because I definitely used to experience that. During rehearsals, I would be going through totally fine, and then during the show, it was like song 2, I'd be sweating my brains out, and I'm like, well, like obviously I'm not rehearsing at the right level or whatever, but like rehearsing for overkill is sort of the way to go, because if you can rap while you're running, you should be on stage and make it look effortless, or it's at least a good way to get you there.
You know what it is rapping while you're running is equal to like rapping while you're nervous. Because yes, in rehearsals, you're comfortable. You're not breathing fast, so you're not making up for that lost breath. But then when you're on stage, because you're nervous, you're taking these smaller breaths. So yeah, I feel like it's equal. Running and then the nervousness, it brings you to like equal.
And your body doing something rhythmic too probably helps. That it's like if you're mentally doing something rhythmic and rapping, and having your body also doing something rhythmic and running, there may be some synergy there that sort of helps you focus.
Yeah, that's where those marks come in too. Like I'll have certain movements that I do, certain dances, and also too, that brings the energy from the crowd. There's like certain dance moves that I hit that I know the crowd's gonna get excited for. And
that's something too that I heard from Concept too. He mentions a lot. Like I've seen from a lot of people in your scene that the performance aspect is really important. You guys all seem to put a lot of effort into trying to actually not just write songs and like put them out there, but actually perform them and be full artists, which is awesome.
100%. And before I met her, I was on a run last year. I was trying to do 100 shows by the end of last year. I only got to 45, but in that 45, I learned so much. I got so much better. I leveled up. I learned what it was like being on stage, like time after time after time. And for me, that's where like the comfortability came from. But in that, I also learned that the cardio is important, because it does just that. It creates a synergy between, your movements and your words and your breathing and your presence, and all that comes with that. But all that to say, I was just getting on stage and rapping. I was just rapping. I was just performing my songs, getting hyped to them, till I met her, and we finally started like performing together. That's where I was like, oh man, like this is what I've always wanted to do. I just never knew. I didn't know it would take this. But me and her, like, we like setting up like a theatrical performance almost. Like me and her, like take it there. We like doing things that are more conceptual in the performance aspect. and that was absent before I met her. So I you know, it's cool to see like how even that aspect evolves as time goes on. So
that's a great point too, because oh, sorry, go for it.
No, I was gonna say I started with that. I kind of
Yeah.
brought the conceptual performances to his side, but my very first performance, I literally like taped fairy lights to an umbrella and came out with my umbrella for my
That's
first.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've always wanted to do like, I aspire to do a Doja Cat level performances one day. So
One of the things I think that's really smart about that is that, you know, I performed at a zillion underground hip hop shows and been to a zillion other people's underground hip hop shows. And it's like the lyrics are sort of the thing that gets lost in the shuffle the most, because it's like the microphones aren't always the great. It's always like if you're going to listen to like an artist you don't know, it's always easier to get them on record than it is to get them live. And there's a lot more noise and it's like the sound might not be calibrated right. But if you're putting on something visually, that's sort of your real way to bring them in, because even if they're not getting like, because they can't hit rewind when you say a dope line, so it's like they might have only gotten half of it, but it's like if you're giving them a reason to draw them and make you pay more attention, that really helps a lot, and that's, you know, the key. Like,
yeah,
I agree with that. I agree with that 100%.
I mean, there's really no like big time rapper out there who's just getting out there like Bill Cosby in a chair, just like, you know, rapping. Like it's like all of them have to have more, you know, it's a big part of it.
Ice Spice is actually getting a lot of flack for that recently because she doesn't really do too much on stage, but
Oh,
she
really?
didn't have time to go through artist development or anything. So
Yeah, and I mean they'll probably get there. I mean, I see her everywhere. It was a name I hadn't heard much all a few months ago, and now it's like I can't turn around without seeing her.
yeah, but on that level, they don't accept it. So
Yeah.
eventually, I'm pretty sure, you know, like her team is gonna work with her. But no, you're right. Big time artists, they definitely put the work into the choreography, the conceptual part of it, all of that. So
Yeah. I saw a clip of Coi Leray on Kimmel recently. And I mean she's a young artist. She's I think about 24, 25. And I was just blown away by how well choreographed everything was, and it's how comfortable she seemed on stage. And I'm like, oh, she's got a big career ahead of her. You know, you know, she's having a huge moment now, but I was like, damn, she's really got it all.
yeah, she has a great stage presence. And then she's just fun in general. I think she just has that natural, like, charismatic factor to her personality. So
Everything her dad didn't have as a rapper, she has.
Right.
oh.
See, and that's the thing right there. That word charismatic. I think you have to have that. You know, you have to be able to like show that on stage, translate that on stage. You know, to whoever's watching, to whoever the audience is.
Yeah.
I just watched Kendrick's show on Amazon. It was like the Big Steppers tour in Paris, and we actually went to that. We went to that live, so we got to see it there. But I got to see it on Amazon again.
That was our first date.
That was our first day, and that's cool too because we connected over music, you know, and that was something that we both enjoyed. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I bring that up to say like, even in someone like him, like his theatrical presence, you know, that it's morphed into from where he was, shows me like, man, there's a lot to learn, a lot to like pick up, and a lot to incorporate in our craft if we want to be on that type of level, you know. So yeah, I'm definitely like open and excited for what's to come for both of us, because we're already thinking of new ways to like incorporate into our like stage performances visually.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Just thinking of yourselves as performers rather than just a rapper is a big step, because it's like they're really then the possibilities are really endless.
Yes, exactly. That's how we feel.
And I think that comes to just me personally being an all-around artist. So I've dipped in painting, poetry was my first love for sure. But really anything artistic. So when it comes, and then even dance, I take dance classes for fun. So to incorporate that and learn some choreography, put it into our shows.
Yeah.
It is funny because I'm into dance too. Like I'm not like a great dancer, but I enjoy like watching like ballet and break dancing and stuff like that. And I've gotten a little like my girlfriend and I will kind of like bust out the TLC moves sometimes in private. But like it's you don't realize how much you learn about music by knowing about dance. Like and it's it's a really valuable tool to, and it gets you ready for performance too, because obviously there's some cardiovascular element to it, but it does teach you a lot about music and a lot about why music pauses when it does and accelerates and slows down when it does. It's a really valuable tool that a lot of people I think overlook. But
Yeah.
let's talk about Redox a little bit, a little more. So how long you guys been working on this, and what was sort of your vision, and maybe talk about the title and where that came from? And
Okay, so we thought of the idea back in December and decided, yeah, it was in December that we decided to even make the album, that we should do one together. But we hadn't written any songs or anything just yet. The idea was there. And so he was talking about making new beats and all of this, and then I was gonna write to them, all of that. That's how we planned for the process to go. But actually, one day I was at work and I felt sad that day, and I wanted to write to I felt sad that day and I wanted to write to like a slower beat. So I posted on my story actually, and I put, any producers who have sad girl music, please send me beats. And so I think a few people did send me beats that day, but I was already looking through my emails and I was looking for old beats that producers had already sent me. And funny story, back in the day before I even met him, he just knew of me on Instagram. He had been sending me beats, I guess, like trying to get me to work with him, and I had never opened them up. But during this time, now that we're like fast forward trying to make an album together, I'm looking for sad girl beats, and I end up searching my emails, and I find an email from him back from February before I even knew him, and found the beat to Red Flags.
that's awesome.
So,
Almost a year later.
that's the second song in the album, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's the second song on the album.
Yeah.
But
so
the first one created.
It was the first one created. Yeah, so I sat there and I wrote during work, sat there and wrote to Red Flags. Ended up going home and telling him like, hey, I have a song to record. And so I told him it was to one of his old beats. I think he took off to go cut hair or do something. So he wasn't even there during that process. I sat there myself and recorded it and presented it to him once he got back. And yeah, the second I presented it to him, he fucked with it. So
yeah, I was mad impressed. I was like, whoa, where did this come from? I was taken aback for sure.
I love the way on the first track you sort of dominate that one a little more, and then Shadow, you start in on Red Flags first, if I remember correctly. And it's just the dichotomy of that I thought cut in really nice when I listened to it. I was like, oh, it's like you both had your time to shine very early on in the album, and it's showing that you both were very talented in your own rights. And it was cool.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what we wanted to go for, 100%. Like she said, we wanted to represent ourselves as rappers, like as individuals coming together, opposed to like a couple album, So, and I think we did a good job of that.
yeah.
Like early on in the album, we got to, I feel like both of us were highlighted,
What was the second song that came?
The second song that came, I think it was Signed Up.
Signed Up? Okay. So yeah, that's just kind of how the process went after that. So I made Red Flags. It sat there for a little bit waiting for his verse. But during that time, he was starting to make beats and starting to write hooks. It's funny because now that I think about it too, I went back and found, or it was towards the end of our album. I told him, I was like, you got to send me more beats. I'll write another song, but you got to send me more beats. And so he starts playing like some older ones that he had on his laptop. And he had this old one that one of his friends, who's part of our collective Unlabeled, Josh, he had made that beat for Pink Kink. And so that one was also an old beat that had just been sitting there. And I ended up writing Pink Kink to that one. When it comes to the title of the album,
so I was gonna touch on next.
Yeah. When it comes to the title of the album, we were probably about like 10 songs in or something.
Yeah, just about. We were about like 10 songs in already.
We were like 9 or 10 songs in, and I literally told him, I was like, all right, I think it was like 10 minutes. I was like 10 minutes. I was like, you can use your phone to like Google, you can use your phone to research. I was like, but write down as many ideas as you can for the title.
For track, for album title.
Yeah, for the album title. And so yeah, we sat there, we wrote down all of our ideas.
And mind you, the I guess the infrastructure for it was energy, like us trading energy, us like, you know, just being two different forces revolving around each other, you know.
Yeah.
So we wanted to find something that fit that, and Redox happened to be, you know, the magic word.
Yeah, Redox, like, it's a chemical reaction, and it's when I think it's two atoms, they trade particles. So it's like you'll hear me talk about it like even in A Million Lives, which is the last song. It's like a dance song, but it says this here is even transfer. And it's just a play on that, like us really are artistic, like bouncing off of each other, like, and then even the process of how we create too, like he really pushed me to be more lyrical. I really pushed him to be more conceptual. I pushed him to be more melodic. He pushed me to like really go hard. Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's what I think. That's what the album embraces. It embraces a lot of that, whether it is positive or negative feelings, you know. Because even in a song like Red Flags, like I've had people tell me that they feel a way about that. They feel like some sort of like emotion when they listen to that, and that's exactly what we wanted to go for, you know. So I feel we did a good job in encapsulating that title.
So if I heard you guys correctly, you said that you came up with this idea in December, and despite some of the beats existing ahead of time, this is already out on March 19th.
Yes. Yeah.
Like that. I mean, that blows my mind to hear that now that I listened to the album today. That's crazy. Like how are you able to keep a schedule like that? I mean, are there 900 half-written songs on, you know, the scrap heap somewhere, or did you just bang out these 13? Like, what was the process to get there in such a short period of time?
And we literally did, yeah, we literally did write everything from scratch. And and I'm gonna be honest, she was on my ass because I was like giving my material to other like songs, other features, and she sat me down one day and she was like, "Look, I'm gonna need your energy for this album. I'm gonna need you to save some of that for this. Like, I need you to write to this." So, you know, I took that and I was like, all right then. All right then.
Yeah,
so
a lot of people were hitting him up for features and stuff and wanting to work, and I would get annoyed at it. So I'm like, bro, like if you're giving them your creativity, because he swears he's just like this, or like never ending flow of creativity. Which he is, but I was like, no, give your time to us so we could get this done. Me, I'm more like, I'm a spout that runs dry every now and then. Like if I work on a big project like this, I do like my downtime before I start writing again to feel inspired again. This man can keep going.
She swears. But yeah, that right there kind of made me sit down with this project and say, okay, all right, I understand the assignment now. I understand what you want out of me. So I'm going to sit here and write, you know, day after day. I'm going to go ahead and like do exactly what you said and put this creativity into this. So yeah, I feel like at that point it sped up the process of oh, that's another thing too. We actually had a deadline. We wanted to create this deadline. That way we knew how much time we had to create and record. And that's what we did. We utilized that time to just record as much as we could in that amount of time. Whatever we had at the end of that, at the deadline, that was it. That was the cap for what was going on the album. Everything after that was just going to be mixing and mastering. And yeah, with both of us, just the force that she is, you know, she came through and we got it done.
It really speaks a lot to your partnership that you're able to sort of achieve that. Because I mean, I've definitely tried similar approaches with different people I've worked with, and I learn really quickly. I'm like, oh yeah, that's not going to work, and there may be no way to make this work. Because I mean, to your point, Shadow, it's like there's most project that get started don't get finished. So it's like if there isn't someone there who can move it along in a you know, positive way, it doesn't get done, you know.
Yeah, and we had just got out of a situation like that where it was a lot of people in the city working together on an EP, or it's like a 4-piece EP, and everybody had opinions. Everybody kept adding into songs, wanting to make changes, and that situation ended up like the start of our album. Really, or it ended up being like the start of us breaking off and just really focusing on our album, because being in that situation, we realized that it wasn't going anywhere, it wasn't going to get done, and we really wanted to work on actual songs that were going to get done, a project that was going to get done. And I'm big on that. Like, I see my songs as my babies, so if they end up sitting there in the vault and never get used, like, I do have songs like that, but I don't like to do it often, because I don't know, like, I like for my babies to be grown up one day. I want to nurture them.
For them to be seen.
Yeah.
Shown off.
Nurture them, let them grow into an adult and deliver them to the world type of thing.
Right.
You know what's kind of funny, it made me think of is before people are successful as rappers, they love calling themselves rappers. I think so, to some degree, and I'm not trying to throw anybody from your crew under the bus, I don't know these people at all, but when you get a large group of people, there's like that working together, there's always a few of them who kind of just like being calling themselves rappers more than they like actually rapping, and that kind of slows the process down a little bit. But then you get to a point where you're actually pretty successful as a rapper, and I find those people no longer want to call themselves rappers. Like, if you ask them what they do, they're like, I'm a producer, I'm a musician, I write. And it's like rappers like the 10th thing they want to do, because they no longer want that association, because everybody can call themselves a rapper. You know?
Yeah.
I literally just used that today. Like, I was on the phone with someone and they asked me what I did. I was like, I'm a songwriter, I'm an artist. And I literally told them I don't like to use the term rapper because it comes with a lot of preconceived notions and cliches. I said, so I like calling myself an artist, but hip hop is my foundation. Being a rapper is my foundation. Yeah. So at the same time, like, I don't shy away from it, but it's more so used as a basis for my creativity now, because at this point, I feel like that's what we do. It's obvious. So I feel like there's just more to it for me not to say that I'm just a rapper. It's like I do all these other things too.
You know what's weird is like there's a double standard with that, because I actually like take pride in calling myself a rapper.
Well, yeah, I do like. I can see. I'm not gonna put words in your mouth. Go for it. I think I know what you're gonna say.
I was gonna say I do like to call myself an artist, because I feel like I am that. You know, like, I do like to sing. I do poetry. I rap.
Conceptual.
I have a rock song sitting in my email right now that this guy wants me to feature on, and I'm definitely excited to tap into that too. But at the end of the day, I think there is a double standard on that, because as a female, for me to be like, oh yeah, I'm a rapper, it's almost like people get excited for that. Like,
right, because for so long I'm reading this book about Biggie that came out recently, and they're talking all about, them trying to figure out what Little Kim's image was going to be, and it made me realize just how different, like, to be a female rapper in the 90s was essentially like what Eminem was to white people in rap is what Little Kim was to, and it was like you were just this one thing. But now it's like, it's almost like when you watch the UFC and the women's, or WWE, and the women's wrestling and fighting is just as good as the men's, and some nights better. And it's like, if the women are having just a great moment in rap now, where it's like, it's no longer just, oh, you're a woman and you're rapping. It's like, you are super talented and you happen to be a woman. It's great.
There's definitely the stereotypes at first, where people do think like, that I'm just doing turn up music, club type music.
Yeah.
But even that, there's like a layer of surprise, because once they actually see like, oh, she's not just doing club type music. I tap into that just because I know that's like what the consumer wants sometimes. But at the end of the day, like, them seeing that I do different styles of rap too, and tap into lyricism and tap into different kinds of flows too, that's just an extra surprise to being a female artist.
Well, like, if lyricism to me is kind of just music with a message, or music where you want people to lean in a little bit. And if you want them to lean in, you have to give them a reason to even have their ears open in the first place. So having that blend where you sort of like, pull them in with a melody and like knock them out with the lyrics, I think is a really smart way to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the sweet spot.
Yeah. For sure. Mixing the two.
Spot. Yeah. That's the sweet spot.
And one thing too I liked about your album is that I felt like every word really mattered. And I think and even now that I know that it came together so quickly, like, it's even more impressive, where there were like you each had your own space in the song and none of it felt like filler, you
Mm.
know. And you made me the way you repeated the lines in the first song made me really think about, oh man, there's so many times I write a line that I'm super proud of, but it just gets crammed in the middle of a zillion other lyrics, and it's like it's only me just sort of like popping myself when I hear it. But like to the idea of actually adding some melody to it and slowing it down, like I definitely took that when I heard that first song. I listened to it a few times and I'm just like, yeah, I'm learning from this, so I appreciate that. You know, it's
Yeah.
so.
Well, that's actually one thing that he took from me too. We had discussed songs with repetitive hooks. And so, and just a lot of repetition throughout the songs. I remember leaning into him at performances and I'm like, you hear that? You hear how many times he said his hook? Or you hear how many times he sung that part?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's why, like, you see the crowd singing along, you
Yeah.
know, I'll point out things like that to him.
Yeah, definitely raised my antennas. And that's the thing too.
Mhm.
I think we spent a lot of time studying like together.
Yeah.
While we were together, I feel like we spent a lot of time studying out it because if we're not performing, we're probably prior we were out supporting everybody in the city. So I felt like we were out together just studying what everybody was doing, you know, how everybody was receiving it. And I feel like we took that, everything we learned, and just put it into our album. And to her point, yeah, I took a lot from her, you know, because prior to me knowing that she was a rapper, you know, it was just me and my opinion and just, you know, going off of how I thought things were supposed to be. Then when I discovered that she was a rapper, I was blown away because just like what we're talking about, the double standard and what's expected of a female rapper. I just didn't get that from her. So you know, every time she has something to say, my ears are open, even in times I don't want to hear it, because I think as rappers we come, I think
there's a pride.
There's an ego there. You have to learn to put that aside, you know. But with someone like her, it's more of a benefit than a discouragement to have somebody like that so close, because you can actually learn something if you open your ears. And that's something I had to learn. So yeah, everything she was telling me, I was listening to her, and yeah, we came back and put it in the music.
Yeah, but I really saw him take that and actually use it because he was more of somebody, he had few songs, you know, that had actual hooks that he would, you know, repeat maybe one or maybe twice throughout the song, twice or maybe three times. But specifically that sitting at people's shows and pointing that out, like, look, he did his hook 5 times.
Yep.
You know, and by the 4th one, everybody's singing along.
Yeah, we saw the effect it had.
Yeah, and without, like, we had that conversation and he, like he said, like really just absorbed it. It wasn't like we discussed it at the start of the album or anything. I just saw him take that and use it. And then like maybe after we discussed it, he's like, yeah, I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, exactly.
You're the Apollo Black, who guests on your album. I did a song with him in concept earlier this year called I Know, and Apollo did the hook, and it's just literally the words I know, I know, I know. And those are the only words, but like almost like I love that song and the way he approached it, because almost every time he says I know it, I feel like it means something slightly different.
Yeah.
And I was like, and every time I listened to that song, I was just like, oh man, I wish more people heard this one, because I loved his approach to it, and I just loved just like the sort of pathos he put into it.
So,
I have to go back and listen
shout out
to that
Apollo
one.
Black.
Yeah, he's actually a perfect example of that. Like he comes up with the most simple hooks.
Yep.
And exactly that, you know, I've seen him perform maybe like 20 times or more.
Yeah.
And every time the crowd is singing the hook or rapping it along with him. So
yeah, I don't know why it took me 20 years making music to start realizing how important hooks are. But, you know, here we are. It's like, and I feel like, because back in the day, I'd be like, yo, I'm gonna put scratching on this hook, and I'm gonna do all these cuts, and I'm gonna mix them up, and you end up with something that's just kind of like, it feels like me going like this, but it doesn't really appeal to anybody because it doesn't have the feeling and the flow. It's just something I kind of manufactured in the studio to kind of make myself happy. And like now I'm realizing, oh, there's a little bit. I mean, Kanye, I once heard him say that rapping is sort of like being a politician. You have to get a message out to a large group of diverse people, so you have to speak in like, you know, certain terms, you know, like Obama with hope and like Trump would make America great again. It's like these are very simple messages, and even both of those messages kind of mean the same thing. The difference is who's saying them, you know. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say it depends on the artist too, though, about how important hooks are. Because I feel like the type of artist you were before, he very much held that title of rapper. And
Right.
if
100%.
yeah, it depends on, I guess, what kind of artist you're really trying to be. Because for me, one thing I really stress to him is like, I want radio play.
Mhm.
And if you notice on the radio, they're playing things that are catchy, things that people
Right.
like the everyday person, you know, can catch on and sing along to. So I really do try to like reel it back into being at least a little bit simplistic for like the consumer. And I feel like he tapped into that more too, instead of just, you know, just spitting bars, spitting bars, spitting bars.
And what I feel like what I learned is like doing those simple hooks and crafting those, it actually makes it easier to craft the verses.
The verse, yeah.
It does,
Sets it up.
yeah. And there's more dichotomy too. It gives people a break. It gives them a transition.
Exactly.
It was
Yeah.
last night I went down. I was listening to that player song because it's kind of tough to avoid, and I started going down a wormhole of like kind of music that I felt that same genre, that same like aesthetic, and I ended up, remember that Mia Khalifa song by Hit or Miss that was big on TikTok a few years ago? It was like Hit or Miss, right? And it was like a diss song at Mia. I don't know. I feel like it was a huge TikTok trend that disappeared, but it was just a goofy, stupid diss song about a porn star's tweet. But I'm like, it had this like thing that just set off TikTok for a while, and it's like I'm listening to it years later, and I'm way out of the demographic of the song, and I'm like, there's something to it, like.
Yeah.
We like there's something to like, if you think back to when music was invented, it was people banging on shit, and it's like, what do you have? You have like a drum and like, I don't know, a buffalo hide, and I hope that doesn't sound like, you know, an insensitive way to put it, but like, and it's like, but there was something to that, and it drummed up emotion in people, and like there is still something to simplicity that I think a lot of people, you know, disregard.
Yeah, there's definitely an art to it still. There's definitely that.
Yeah, for sure. And then like he said, it allows room for you to go harder in your verse. And I think that's how I play it most of the time. I've kind of told him, if I'm gonna do more of a rap hook and I want it to be complex, I'll go more simple when it comes to like, I'll probably add melodies or something just to balance it out. And then when it comes to doing more of a simplistic hook, that's where I'll kind of go harder. Like Big Bags is the perfect example of that.
Oh,
I love
yeah.
that track. Yeah.
Big bags in mine, big bags in mine. And
Simple.
so, yeah, I told him, I
Yeah.
was like, I want to go hard on
And
this.
she
like,
went crazy. She went
Yeah.
crazy. That's
So-
nuts.
What's funny, even look at someone like Eminem, and like his biggest songs, the really, really big ones are ones where he kind of steps aside and someone like Rihanna comes in and does the hook. Because it's like, and it's more like you were saying, it's more of a simplified but still very impactful and well executed. And it's like, as he's wrote of that rapper, he doesn't really have his own hooks except for like Lose Yourself and some of their songs. They're not as up to par as it is when he steps aside and lets somebody else sort of fills the space. And you know, it's you know,
Interesting point. That's an
Yeah.
interesting point.
it was funny. There was definitely this time in hip hop when like Ja Rule came out, when you were definitely getting a lot of crap for being like that R&B hip hop blend. Like that was like a thing everybody picked on Ja about back in the day, but it was such a sexist attitude to have, I think, because it really diminished. It was like everyone's like, oh, it's just to get the women, whatever. But it also treated women as if there were only like one or two things, which I think is like, you know, women have been portrayed as being either the whore or like, you know, the woman in the kitchen forever. And it's like, oh, finally now it's like we're in a society where women are allowed to be more than three things. And I think
Yeah.
it took us way too long to get there, but I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I started off talking about Ja. I don't know how I landed there from the Ja Rule thing, but I'm getting a little rambling.
I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, I don't know. It's you know, it's late here on the East Coast. So what about influences? So one thing you mentioned a little about Drake, and I have to admit, I had never really heard everything I knew about Drake, I knew from memes or about songs that Pusha T wrote. And Drake came out a little bit after my time, and there's certain of these big rappers that I don't like Wayne was somebody who I didn't get until years later. It was Concept that really had to show me why Wayne was great. And I'm like, oh, how did I miss all of this? And Drake was a similar one where I finally sat down and listened to some Drake the other day. I'm like, I don't know what I was scared of. This stuff's actually pretty good. Like,
Yeah.
I think all I knew him from was like a Sprite commercial, I guess, and like these memes where he looks kind of goofy. But
Do you feel like you try not to go towards what's mainstream, what everybody's listening
well,
to?
it's yes and no, because what I realize is sometimes that like I'm a little behind. Like I remember when 50 Cent's Get Rich or Die Trying came out. I thought that was going to be the new Big's Ready to Die. And when I heard it, I was like disappointed it didn't have that same level of whatever. And I was like, oh, this is just kind of marketing, whatever. But I listened to it again like 10 years later. I'm like, no, this is a really solid album. And I just, and a lot of that, like Cameron's a rapper who I didn't get for years later. I mean, but there are some people like Kanye who I've always dug. There's a lot of really big name artists. Like I'm a huge Mariah fan. I love that. But there's some people that just takes me a long time to get, you know?
Like they grow on you, right?
Yeah. And part of it too, as I mentioned this in a different episode, like the more of like the mumble rap, like Lil Peep was somebody whose name I heard for years, and I tried to listen. I'm like, this is not for me. But then I watched a documentary about him, and I got to see what the culture was like, and I saw people at shows interact with like, oh, this makes so much more sense in context than it does just me, sitting in my cubicle like pushing songs on Spotify. And it sort of encouraged me to understand that like the context around the music is important, and it's also a good window for me to understand people that I don't interact with on a daily basis, because I see people that sort of carry that same image of like those little peeps, but I don't talk to them. It's like I don't stop strangers in the mall and be like, what's your life about? But like now I can understand it a little better from a distance, and then the music makes more sense. So it's like my way of sort of communicating, like trying to learn more about people.
That's so true. And like just to come off of that, that's actually important too when it comes to like your social media presence these days. So like one thing I do try to do is not put all my business out there, but I do try to make it a little more personal, just so people can kind of see what type of person I am behind the artist too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that definitely plays a factor in like gaining fans and people actually wanting to listen to your music.
I've noticed a lot lately that when I put myself in the post, which is something that I always didn't want to do for years, I get better engagement, because it's like people, they've seen the same square piece of art. There's like nothing that really makes them stop, but having a human touch, it definitely makes a big difference.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You want to go back to what he was? I'm sorry, I was gonna say back to what you were saying about artists that influence you.
Influences.
Oh yeah, let's do that.
I was just gonna say that real quick, because me and her just did like a video on Instagram. I don't do this much. I don't show myself much on Instagram or anything like that. But me and her just did a video promoting our Georgia show date, and yeah, we got a lot of engagement from that. But I think just showing our personality, just showing our faces, online, like really helped with that too. So to y'all's point, yeah, y'all are correct in that.
Today was the day that I realized that I don't know, I sound like a zillion years old when I say this. So there's a captions button where if you talk, it'll just put the words on the screen, and I'm like, oh, where have you been my whole life? Because I watch a lot of stuff without sound just because I'm usually doing something else. But like, there's so many little tricks like that help you engage more that I'm just way behind on.
Yeah, she showed me that. I'm telling you, I feel like I'm the old head in this relationship. And she be putting me on to a lot of stuff that I'm like, oh, I didn't think about it like that. Oh, I didn't know.
I think when it
comes to like the image side.
Yeah, when it comes to that, I'm like,
when it comes to, but I think that's like, well, I don't know. It depends. But I was gonna say, I think that's females in general. Like we have more of an eye for like the aesthetic. Yeah,
100%.
But that stuff matters, because if you look at who, like people like Diddy and like Kanye, they were very successful in both like the aesthetic and the music. Like it all kind of came together. And it's something that, and I think a lot of men, they probably like, when they get to that point, they start hiring the stylist to kind of be like, okay, well now I'm Eminem, I'm not just wearing a Nike hoodie everywhere or whatever. Like I need somebody to get me a suit that fits right. But learning how to do it yourself is so much more valuable, and finding your own style. It's
exactly unlabeled.
Yeah, he's got it.
Unlabeled.
Yeah, that's our collective, Unlabeled, and it's spelled UNLBLD. But that's exactly what that encapsulates. Just trying to find our way in our own unique, way as well. So
yeah.
But influences, right?
Yeah.
I feel like Kanye is like a huge one. I would say Kanye, Jay, Andre 3000. today, Cole, Kendrick, for me, just real introspective artists. I think that's where I've gained like the most influence from, because growing up, that's all I was listening to. That's what my dad, my mom was playing around me. So I feel like at first, same thing. I didn't understand a lot of these artists. I didn't get it. I didn't understand like how I was supposed to receive it. I just knew that it sounded good to me. And as I grew older, I started to grasp the concepts little by little, you know, and I don't know, I started realizing like, yo, I take to things like this. I don't know why, but I do. And it wasn't until like I started, you know, realizing that I love literature in school that really started to gravitate towards me more. Like I really started taking towards it, because I I felt like writing was an outlet. It was like it was therapeutic for me. So I felt like when I would listen to these artists, they were conveying feelings that I was they were conveying things that I was feeling to the T without even knowing me.
Right.
So I was like, how are they able to do this? So in turn, I wanted to do the same thing with my music, and I always told myself like I think I can get to that point one day, and I think I'm getting there at this point, because
So
I've studied so much. I've studied so much of my favorites, like to their idiosyncrasies, like to their everything. So I mean, I feel like the more that I pay attention to artists like that who really have a passion for the art, for the craft, I feel like those artists right there are who, and see, I never look at them and want to be them. I just feel like they've laid a perfect blueprint for me to follow.
right.
And I've always heard that you gotta have some sort of mentor, even if it's
Huge.
an unofficial one. Yeah. And I feel like I've looked to some of those guys as that. And I feel like I've only gotten to a point that I'm at because of how much I've studied them. So yeah, and it's been through everything, like performance aspect, cadences, lyricism, the way they flip words, the way they hold themselves, the way they, interact with other artists, the way they have this presence online, everything. Like I feel like if you're paying attention to all of that, you can't miss a beat.
Right.
So
I could see the similarities too in the artists that you've named.
Those are all artists too that don't release a song unless they have something to say. And I think that's a really, and they mentioned too the mentor thing. That reminded me of something from this book too, is that, we talked a lot about the delusional stuff, but he also talks a lot about being humble and here and having gratitude. And I think that like having a mentor is somebody who you're essentially admitting, yes, there's people out there with something to teach me. And I've met a lot of people in my life who think that there's nobody who has anything to teach them. But like just having a mentor and sort of surrendering yourself up to someone bigger than you are is a huge part, especially to counteract the delusional part of it too. It's a great point that he makes in this book.
Yeah, there's that saying that you always have to be a student.
Yeah.
You should always be open to being a student.
And that was always my thing. I always felt like if I'm gonna advance at any point, I have to stay a student.
Yeah.
First, always. Even if I feel like I have something to teach, or I'm at a point where I feel like I can pass down knowledge or share with the next, and I do. As soon as I feel like somebody can use something I know, I'm giving that. I'm not selfish with it. I'm not selfish with that. Like
Right.
I'll give the game if I feel like I can give it to you and you're ready to receive it. Because that's the thing too. Like other artists have to be ready to receive it.
Right.
Otherwise, it comes off as you like knowing to like you
critiquing them.
Yeah, you critiquing them, and you knowing you them feeling like you think you think you're better, those kind of things. So yeah, you always got to be a student, and I think that's something I just pride myself in.
Yeah.
It's funny too. This book also reminded me of something. So I don't know if you guys know who Steve Ditko is, but he was the artist that created Spider-Man and Doctor Strange. Like he was the guy. Like Stan Lee created them. I know I'm going on a left turn here, but he created the actual idea for the characters. But Steve Ditko designed the characters, so he's created Spider-Man. It's pretty big thing. You know, a lot of people can say that. And I had heard he sort of went into seclusion later in his life. But I had heard that if you wrote him a letter and his address is on the internet, which it was, he would write you back. And so I wrote him a letter. He must have been around 90 at the time that I wrote it. And I asked him, like, what's the piece of advice he would have that I could hang over my drawing table to sort of remind me or give me some motivation or inspiration. And I was a little disappointed by what he wrote back, and I got it back in a few weeks at first. But then I realized how valuable the lesson was, and it matches up with his book. And he says, "Dear Timothy, since everyone is an individual, what works for one does not work for everyone. One has to want some goal end and be willing to do what one can, need to do, and to achieve that goal, and with no guarantees. Regards, Steve Ditko." And the idea of doing it with no guarantees it's another way of saying, like, be delusional. It's like you're doing this because you're doing this because it's who you are, and it's like you have to embrace. It's like you think you want to be an artist, but it's doing the work that we're all doing to embrace that and drag it in, and then it's actually inside yourself and it's who you are. And I think he's making a very similar point to what Russ is making, and they couldn't be any more different people, you know.
That's one thing I have to say that I definitely agree with, because I feel like when it comes to the rap world, I feel like a lot of people do have expectations of making it big, do have these expectations of going viral. Maybe the music world and the music industry in general, people have those expectations. But it's been a hard battle for myself, I have to say, like being around that energy, because there are a lot of people like that in, the community and there's a balance too, but they have these super high goals for themselves, and I have those too, but at the same time too, like I'm okay with the fact of leaving my mark on this world. So I definitely see making music, writing poetry, even paintings, anything that my name gets to be put on and left in this world, especially my words, that's an achievement in its own. So I definitely agree with that for sure.
Concept talked a little about that when I interviewed him, and how like a lot of these people wish for the success but wouldn't know what to do with it if they got it. Like if they woke up tomorrow and there was 10,000 because they recorded one song in their bedroom and there's now 10,000 people that want to see them perform, it would end up being the worst day of their life, most likely.
I would be scared. Like
freaked out.
But yeah, no, for sure. And that's something that I struggle with, because I'm an empath, so when people have those energies around me and it's so competitive, I feel like, oh, I gotta be better. Oh, I gotta come up with the next album. I gotta come up with the best, like the next best song. But then I do have to like reel myself in and remind myself of why I do it personally, and just remind myself that there's no expectations. I'm not gonna put expectations on this, because I just want to enjoy doing it. Like at the end of the day, I just want to enjoy making music. I want to enjoy performing.
Right.
And that I want to just leave my words in the world with my name on it. So
yeah, and there's enough sort of recycled garbage out there. It's like, I think, as we're seeing now with AI being able to make it, make drawings and be able to make music and stuff, the more personal you can make something, I think is really an investment in what the future of art is going to be. Because I think there's going to be more and more of this manufactured art, but it's still very hard to manufacture, humanity in a way that translates to people.
yeah, and I could also take that back to who inspires me when it comes to artists. One inspiration I really take from Drake is the fact that, and I think it's why he's been in the industry for so long, is he's been able to take ideas that have been done already over and over and find a new way to flip it and like put his perspective on it. Even if not in such a personal way, at least in his own creative perspective. So obviously he's like the king of samples, I would say. But yeah, that's actually a big inspiration I take from Drake, is just that he's able to take those things that are so recycled and somehow still make it into something new that everybody catches on to.
And sort of with someone like him too, where it's like, he started off as an actor. I know he was on Degrassi, and it's like that's something that's so easy to clown him on. But it's also one of the reasons he's so successful because it's like, Britney Spears started in the Mickey Mouse Club, and it's like all of that stuff. If you're not one of the ones who turns into, the coked out 21-year-old who can't handle the fame, you're getting a real boot camp in what it's like to be an entertainer and a performer. And these are lessons that I'm just learning now that they learned when they were, pre-pubescent, probably.
No, for real. Even like just being in front of people, being in the public eye, you're definitely getting prepared for what we do now. That's one thing that's one thing I get props on from my everyday like coworkers and stuff. They're like, wow, so you get up there in front of people and you speak and you perform and you dance. I'm like, yeah. They're like, I could never do that. I'm like, well, I didn't think I could do that either, but I do it.
Yeah, I think that's something I don't realize that we're out here doing that effortlessly at a certain point until somebody brings that to our attention. Like, yo, I would be so nervous to do that. It's like, what? Oh yeah, like damn, I forget this isn't like normal.
But I feel like you're wired differently for some reason.
Yeah.
It's that, like I said, how when you get on stage and say you have a bad performance, does it make you not want to do it again? You're probably not the type who wants to be on stage or wants to be.
Right.
Or
that's so true.
Does it give you that drive to get up there and do it again and do it better? I feel like if you are that type of person, you're probably meant for the stage.
Probably meant, yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
And to not be the type of person who screws one thing up and then like goes and breaks the mirror in the bathroom. Like I knew some of those people coming up too. I'm like, dude, chill. Like it's like be able to have that right spot in the middle where you're just like, okay, like you have the right. It's self-awareness is really what it's about. It's
I was like, I might break the mirror, but I'm gonna fix it after, and then I'm gonna do it again. I've definitely had those moments though where you're so frustrated with yourself. He's seen it.
Yeah, I get those moments in recording, like when I can't get a certain takedown, when I'm trying my best and I know it's obtainable and I'm missing a pocket or I'm missing like a word in the cadence. Like those are the times where I'll get that frustrated. But other than that,
you start losing objectivity because it's like if you hear the same joke 100 times, it's not as funny as it goes on, but it's like but like around the 20th time it stops being funny, the 30th time it's funny again, then it stops being funny the 50th time, but then it's funny again because you've said it so many times, the 70th time. And it's like when I'm doing all those multiple takes of my songs, I'm like, okay, is this only because I've heard it a million times, or I don't know what I'm doing? Like it's
right, exactly.
You have no sense of time, no sense of creativity, you're just numb at that point. Like you do it that many times.
I had to learn too as I got older that I physically had to change. I had to change because physically my voice couldn't handle doing 100 takes. I was like, okay, well, I have to make these all matter because I will not be able to talk tomorrow if I do this. And so it's the physical limitations that forced me to make better artistic decisions. But
I get like that too. Like I've noticed compared to other artists that if I'm even just rehearsing so many times, I can start feeling my voice get tight. So I've started to learn like when to sense it, and that's when I'll tell you like, okay, I'm good. Like let's wait till we actually perform.
That's so crazy because I wasn't aware of that before. I wasn't aware of that before until I started realizing, okay, maybe I want to plan this verse out and make sure I have it down. I think maybe that's where I evolved into not even writing my lyrics down anymore in the phone or writing in the pad no more. I started memorizing like 2 lines at a time, and I would sit there with them until I know for a fact I memorize these 2 lines, and then I'll build on top of that until like I have a good 8, 9. Then I'll put it in my phone just so I won't forget it.
Right.
Even at that, I'm still there trying to make sure I have it up here to the T, like over and over and over again, and under my breath too. That way I'm not wasting my breath or not straining my voice. Mm-hmm. I'm going over it again, and then once I know I have it to where I can also project it how I want to, and it doesn't seem like I'm reading it, or it doesn't seem like I'm reading it off the pad. That's where I'm like, okay, cool. This is the best way for me because I'm not straining my voice. I can do at least 2 to 3 takes, and I'll get this off. I know I'll get it off. And if not, then I'll sit with it again, revise it, and keep going over it until I know I can lay this verse down in like three more takes. And maybe that's how like the album came together so quickly, because
Yeah, he's crazy. He's crazy with that. Like he'll literally just be there and he'll like write a couple things down, like he said, and then yeah, I just see him to himself like and then he'll get on the mic and just do it. And I'm like, that's crazy, because me, I have to write
That's how Biggie did it, according to what I read
I have to
yesterday.
write all the lyrics down, and I'm like, you
Well,
know,
you know
and
what?
that's I was gonna say that's what I'm trying to actually tap more into, is more of like the just letting it flow naturally, I guess, when you're actually recording it.
Yeah.
Because that's a problem I actually have, is my first few takes do come out sounding like I'm reading it.
Yeah.
And then it's not until like I've learned it a little bit that I'll get that perfect recording.
Well, I think what you're talking about that you do actually makes a lot of sense. So one of the things that I'll end up doing is I'll have the same problem, which sounds like I'm reading it, because I'll write it and then I think about performing it. But and then you realize, oh, I've written something that doesn't perform well with a beat. But if you're sort of writing it, or if you're taking that much time to write as you go, one at a time, you're really reinforcing the melody as you go, and you're not forgetting the way you had it in your head that you should sound. Because I mean, I'll write like this, like, you know, something that goes up and down like this, but then like when I read it the second time, I won't read it the same melody as I wrote it, and then it's crap. But that's a really great way to avoid that.
Exactly. And I never understood, because they always said Jay-Z never wrote his lyrics down.
Yeah.
I never understood that. You know, I never understood how you could do that, and it's all of what he does. It's all of the intricacies and all the schemes and all of that, until like I got to this point to where it's like, oh, it's not even so much about like the braggadocious factor of not writing nothing down. It's just about like time. It's more about like, you know, okay, it's more time consuming to sit there and like write on a pen and pad or on the phone, and then you're there not reciting it the way you wanted to or how you hear it coming out. So I think that's where that comes from for me, and I've just realized that's the most easiest way for me to get stuff off, because it's so like it's quicker for me. And I feel like I don't have to like craft the whole verse in my head also like right away. I could just do like 4 or 5, know I can memorize it, kind of recite it the way I want to, how I'm hearing it in my head, and just add on to it later. Even if I gotta come back to it.
I was gonna say, I wish I had the memory for that.
And that's what I was gonna say too. It's just muscle. I feel like memory is a muscle, and it's as long as you're doing that, continuously doing that, that's going to sharpen up too. So I feel like that right there helps you with your recordings and in your performance aspect. So
yeah, true.
That's why I practice at that right there. That's my thing. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what you guys have coming up next. I know you guys are doing some shows. Like, what are you planning for the future for you?
So we just recently put out a flyer for the Redox tour. So we got together 5 different cities to go perform sets from the album. We already did Haltom City, which is on the outskirts of Fort Worth, Texas. So that one's already crossed out, done. Next we have Austin on 420. Then we have New Orleans, Mace.
No, right after that we have Savannah, Georgia.
Okay, so
Savannah, Georgia is beautiful. I've been. It's such a great place.
It's gonna be our first time. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I've been there. I was there a few years ago. It's really nice.
Yeah. So Austin, then Savannah, Georgia, then New Orleans, and then back to San Antonio. We have a performance here.
Back home here.
Yeah. So yeah, that's our 5 show tour.
Yeah, it's our 5 show tour schedule.
That's awesome.
Just that we're planning, you know, to get even more creative on the performances. We performed well in Haltom City. It wasn't a huge crowd. It was a good enough crowd. Mostly artists though, so it was more of like a mixer, getting to know people from that city. But we definitely took home notes from that performance. So there was like little cues that we missed that maybe the audience didn't notice, but we noticed it within ourselves, and we're just kind of like, oh, it would have hit better if we did this.
Yeah.
Definitely want to push the album to its like full potential. Want to get out videos for it. You know, we really want to just give the album, you know, to everyone in many different ways, as many ways as we can, you know.
Yeah,
to
we're
really
definitely,
convey.
yeah, I'm sorry. I was gonna say, we're definitely gonna work on videos, and then when it comes to our shows too, we're gonna add more to our merch tables. So right now we have like shot glasses, we have bottle openers, that all have the Redox brand on it. So yeah, working on that. Yeah.
You're doing something right, because I mean I've been seeing Shadow, especially your videos for feels like a long time on Instagram, like other people bigging you up. So like you guys, you're getting the word out there. And you're getting a great response, and it sounds like you're really moving in the right direction.
Yeah, a lot of people have definitely given us props for the promotion. So yeah, yeah, we've taken that into account for sure.
Yeah.
Any yeah. So any final words or anything else you want to touch on before we wrap this up?
I would say, okay, you talk first.
Well, I would say, you know, just expect a lot from us. We're not done by a long shot, you know. We actually just added Shadow to the collective labels, and we got a lot in store coming. And that's more music from her individually, me individually. You know, we might circle back, do a part two, maybe, if that's in the future, if that's in the, you know, if it's in the stars. But yeah, just expect more music, more moves, more shows, more videos, visuals, collaborations. We're open to that too. I produce. I you know, I'm getting my feet wet in the engineering field. I'm getting better at that as time goes on. So yeah, we're definitely gonna stay busy. We're gonna be everywhere. We're trying to leave our footprints, you know.
Yeah, one thing I do want to highlight before we go is that JT produced, or I'm sorry, let me do that over. We'll cut that. He goes by JT, but I'll call him SETTHETONE-T. I was gonna say, one thing I do want to highlight is that SETTHETONE-T produced all but one of those beats on that album.
Damn.
And he also mixed and mastered that whole album as well.
Wow. Then
So,
that's a really important talent to have. The more things you can do in house, the better. It's just, you know.
I agree with that. And again, in that Russ book, it talks about being self-sufficient. And that's something I pull, like that's a page I'm pulling from that, because I feel like that's important. I feel like the more you know in-house, like you said, you don't really have to outsource for things, and you don't have to wait around on anybody. And that's something that's, I think if we did, the album wouldn't have got done as quick as it did.
Right.
yeah.
You know, and I feel like I feel like people can take that and perceive it as selfish, I guess, because you know you don't want to work with nobody. They can take it as you don't want to work with nobody else. But for me, I feel like it's just better to have more swords in your bag, or more tools in the bag,
Right.
you know. So
Yeah, but shout out to him for producing all the beats but one. Like I said, the last one was Pink Kink. Doc actually produced that one. And then him working tirelessly at mixing and mastering the album too, getting that done. But yeah, I guess that would be my final words, that we worked really hard on this album in such a short amount of time, like you pointed out, and really poured ourselves into it still so naturally. So if anybody is watching this and hasn't heard the album, definitely go check it out. Like I said, we do this off of passion, off of the love of music. Mine stems from the love of writing, so that, you know, makes it even more personal. It's not just a sport for me. So as much as, you know, I hate for promotion to feel so like pushed and just
Right.
robotic, like it's just, you know, I want you to hear this, I want you to hear this. But I want you guys to know that even at a personal level, like, you know, we put our hearts into everything that we do. So definitely, if you haven't listened to it, go find your favorite song, listen to that, and hopefully that favorite song will have a video to it. We've already chosen which ones we want to do, but we're not going to announce it. But we will be doing music videos soon. I'm pretty sure the females, for the most part, just looking at the numbers and the stats, I can see which ones a lot of people like, and it's looking like that's going to be one of the videos. So I'm definitely excited for that coming up. So you guys keep an eye out for that. And then thank you to you for having us as well.
No problem. Thank you for being here. I just want to mention, you can really hear the passion. I mean, I mentioned throughout this interview that it's a really great album, and I think you can really you feel some energy come off of it that I thought was unique and special. I would recommend people check it out and follow both of you on all your socials, and follow whatever you have coming next, and hopefully check you out if you're coming to a town near them.
Yes,
Sure,
sir.
thank
Thank you.
Mhm.
Cool. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next time.
Nah, bro, like, Shorty really the female version of me. I can't make this shit up. It's like, it's one thing for her to know how to do this, but for her to already mirror me back, it's like, whoa.
Hey, little baby, I admit it, I'm stuck on you. True. Haters get mad, they don't have it, wouldn't know what to do with you. Cool. Baby, you bad as my habit, I'll make you choose. Ooh, baby, you got it right now, you got the juice too. Hey, little baby, I admit it, I'm stuck on you. True. Haters get mad, they don't have it, wouldn't know what to do with you. Cool. Baby, you bad as my habit, I'll make you choose. Ooh, baby, you got it right now, you got the juice too.
They could have your whole playbook, baby, and not move like you. Step-by-step instructions, and can't move in a room. Can't call you my other half, my match. You're all on your own and it's mad attractive. Magnetic pulling, I'll slide on behalf of the one and the two. Step through like we're dancing. Ooh, it's the passion. Way that you step in the booth and get active. The way that you toe up in boots for the handshakes. No dudes couldn't do it like you, so they move for the views, cue the antics. Tragic the way that they doubt it again and again. I choose you under new circumstances. Magic the way that you look across the room just to catch me back looking at you. True, you have it.
Hey, little baby, I admit it, I'm stuck on you. True. Haters get mad, they don't have it, wouldn't know what to do with you. Cool. Baby, you bad as my habit, I'll make you choose. Ooh, baby, you got it right now, you got the juice too. Hey, little baby, I admit it, I'm stuck on you. True. Haters get mad, they don't have it, wouldn't know what to do with you. Cool. Baby, you bad as my habit, I'll make you choose. Ooh, baby, you got it right now, you got the juice too.
Her imitation too flattering. Limitations don't have any image belong in my gallery. Bad gal like Riri. Rally behind you and tally it up. Diligent strategies add to the love. Both going hard, going far, and it's rough. Tough skin, she don't play hide and seek. Up since 5, trying to find that streak. She'll hold up, pay stubs and receipts. Don't rub her the wrong way back to the streets. Ask for that peach, homegrown here in Texas. Passenger seat, ride for me, I'm reckless. Ask for the feature, the flow is a death wish. Passion is sweet and you up to my speed, I can sense it. Hence the respect that you have out here. You a classic and that shit eccentric.
Hey, little baby, I admit it, I'm stuck on you. True. Haters get mad, they don't have it, wouldn't know what